Hi, welcome to Yoga Selection. My name is Rod. Our focus today, back care. We'll be working with a sequence to help improve the overall health of your spine. Make sure that you've got a chair and a blanket. We'll have our mats up against the wall and let's get started. We'll take the chair. Let's position the chair towards the far end of the mat. Now we'll be kneeling, a version of the pose Ardha Mukha Virasana. Distance of the chair away from your knees, it's roughly the length of a yoga block. Have your big toes together touching, your knees are apart, and then keeping your hips back onto your heels, bring the hands first of all to the seat of the chair, and then make sure that you can reach up onto the top of the chair without your hips lifting off your heels. Now, for me then, I just needed to bring the chair in just that little bit closer so that I could hook the tops of my fingers over the top of the chair, but still maintaining contact of the hips back onto the heels. Make sure it's a firm grip with the fingers. Keep your elbows straight. And now the objective to create more of a sense of traction, of stretching, through the shoulder region, but also through the whole length of the spine. Now the way that we can achieve that, maintaining that firm grip with the fingers, but consciously working to anchor our pelvis. Start with the back of the pelvis first of all, move it down away from the spine, and then in addition to that, find the sides of the pelvis, that outer hip area, and draw downwards towards the floor. As a consequence of that, you'll feel more of a firm push with the backs of the thighs, for some it might be the buttock region, onto the heels. And then just to finish that shin region, the lower shin area, make sure that the lower shins are pressing firmly down onto the floor. As you anchor your hips, you're resisting with your hands, making as long a line as possible between the wrists and the hips, and as straight a line as possible between the wrists and the hips. For some people, the chair is at quite a convenient height there to rest the chin or even the forehead. Try not to do that though. Have the head raised so that you're looking directly ahead, not resting the head down onto the seat of the chair. Okay, and then we'll release. We'll keep the legs as they are. We'll just push the chair a little bit further out. So the yoga chair that I'm using, it has a crossbar between both the front legs and the back legs. Some yoga chairs may only have a crossbar between the back legs. If that's the case, flip your chair around so that you've got a crossbar to work with. If you don't have a crossbar on the chair that you're working with, you'll need to have your hands up onto the seat of the chair. Preferably though, we can come a little bit lower than that onto the crossbar. So a moment just to bring your hands onto the crossbar. Make sure that you've got your palms flat, so you're not grabbing the crossbar. You've got your hands flat, your fingers spreading. And then we're just going to push the chair out without the hips lifting off the heels. Again, we want as straight and as long a line as possible from the wrists back through the shoulder region to the pelvis. Press our hands down into the crossbar, make sure that the elbows are straight. In this particular pose, the side ribs move back away from the chair. Feel as that occurs, the hips become more anchored. It's as if someone holding the pelvis and pressing it back and down more firmly onto the heels. But feel it, the side ribs move back, the pelvis stays down, but still there's space for the spine to lengthen forwards towards the chair, and the sternum bone, the breastbone, it can move away from the navel. So we're going to add now a slight twisting action to this pose. Let's first of all take the right hand off the chair and place it to the floor near the right knee. You have your elbow bent and your palm pressing down into the floor. And then slide the left hand across the chair, across the crossbar, so that it's placed on the chair where the right hand has just been. For the moment, look down at the floor, keep your chest level to the floor, and let's straighten the torso. Notice how the left side ribs tend to bulge outwards, So let's now move them in. Left side ribs move in, and then pressing with the hands. You've got the left hand onto the chair, the right hand to the floor. Pressing with the hands, deepen the right thigh crease back and into the body. Thigh crease is that natural crease in the body where the legs and the torso join. Draw it back towards the wall behind. Pressing the hands onto the chair, onto the floor, anchor the left hip socket. Draw it back and down and into the body. And then pressing with the hands, we'll add a twisting action, starting with the pubic bone at the front of the pelvis, turn it to the right, and then follow that through so that the left back ribs spread away from the spine. You'll find your right shoulder will lift. As it lifts, make sure you're not dropping the left elbow. Keep the left elbow firm and raised as the shoulders turn. Okay, and then we'll release. We'll bring the right hand up onto the chair and we slide it across towards the, towards the left side of the crossbar. The left hand, it comes to the floor there beside the knee. Start looking down with your face, with your chest. Move the right side ribs in. And then pressing with the hands, draw the left thigh crease back. And pressing with the hands, descend the right hip socket down. And then pressing with the hands, turn the pubic bone to the left. The right back ribs, they spread downwards away from the spine. As a result of that, the shoulders turn, but keep the right elbow lifting as the shoulders turn. Left shoulder lifts up, and the right elbow lifts up, making as straight a line and as long a line as possible between the right wrist and the right hip. Okay, and then release. Let's just bring the chair back in a little bit closer to the knees. Then we're going to hold the front legs of the chair. So we've had the hands onto the crossbar of the chair. Now we're holding the legs directly. And we're just going to re-maneuver the chair. We're just going to slide it a little bit across to the right. So that, maybe just to give you a good reference point there, I've brought the feet of the chair directly in front of the right knee. So if I was to trace a line from my right knee, it would bisect the feet of the chair. Then I'm just going to angle the chair roughly 45 degrees into the body, and then we'll hold the front legs of the chair and then push the chair out. And we're making as straight a lines as possible here from right wrist to the right hip. So we can press with the right hand into the chair and move the right thigh crease back into the body. And then with the left hand, we can press into the chair and ensure that the left hip socket is descending. Now, the hands got to have a firm grip onto the chair. As they do, move your left side ribs in. The navel, it moves across towards the right side. Pubic bone to the right. Add a slight twisting action. We won't get quite the same degree of turning into the shoulder region, but you will be able to get it down into that pelvic area. So pubic bone to the right. The left back waist, turn away from the spine. The left back ribs turn away from the spine, but without dropping the left elbow. And then release, and we'll bring the chair across and around to the left side, and then holding the front legs of the chair and pushing the chair out. So this particular version of Ardha Mukha Virasana, not so much about twisting the spine, more about straightening the spine. Have a sense of how the spine would appear if seen from directly above. And notice that tendency for it to make a curved shape across to the left. And now see if you can straighten that shape. So right side ribs move in. Left thigh crease move back. And the right hip socket descend. Right back ribs turn away from the spine, but without dropping the right elbow. Okay, and then release. Let's come all the way up, and we'll keep the chair with the front of the chair facing us. Still, we've got 2 feet on the yoga mat, 2 feet off the yoga mat. And that just allows the chair to have some grip, but also some maneuverability if we do need to push the chair out a little bit further. Hands then placed onto the top of the chair, palms facing down, fingers spreading. And then step your feet back. We're making a simple right angle shape with the body. So I'll give you a moment just to find that position. Press your hands down and straighten your elbows. So the elbows lift up as they straighten. Keeping the elbows straight, make sure that the shoulders are not pushed inwards towards the neck. So just coordinate that. Keeping the elbows straight, but just loosen the shoulders. Give them some space away from the neck. From the outer armpits, draw back through the side ribs, through the sides of the waist to the pelvis. And pressing your hands down, press your thighs back. Coordinate the 2 actions. The hands press down, and as they press down, the thighs press back. And that combination of movements, again, it just helps to give that sense of length, traction through the shoulder region, but also through the whole of the spine. Make sure that the front of the pelvis is moving away from the spine, where the pubic bone is, but also the back of the pelvis. Move the back of the pelvis away from the spine. And then to come out of the pose, partially bend the knees, step forwards towards the chair, and then place your hands down onto the seat of the chair and step the feet back. You need to come a little further back now with the feet. Make sure that the legs are vertical, the hips directly over the ankles. And again, make as straight a line as possible from the wrists back through the shoulder region, right the way to the pelvis. To achieve that straight line, the hands press down, the elbows lift up, but the back ribs, they move down and into the body. Here it's towards the floor. Elbows lifting, but the back ribs moving down. And then as the hands press down, it's not just a downward action, it's as if the hands press down, and whilst pressing down, pushing the chair outwards towards the center of the room, away from the feet. Notice how that gives a really clear direction to the side ribs. They move back in the direction of the pelvis, and the pelvis, as if someone holding it and pulling it back towards the wall behind you. Keep your heels anchored, press the heels down, press the hands down, move the hips back so that you can lengthen through the shoulders, but also through the whole length of the spine. Okay, and then bend your knees and step forwards. We'll need a good amount of space here between the end of the mat and the wall. So we're just going to slide the chair a little bit further out, but again, just for the stability of the chair, make sure that you keep 2 feet on the yoga mat, 2 feet off the yoga mat. We're then going to bring our elbows down onto the seat of the chair. The chair that I'm working with has some inbuilt cushioning onto the seat. If you've got a steel-based seat to your chair, you may need to put some padding there. You could put a spare yoga mat or a blanket to give yourself a little bit of cushioning for the elbows as they come onto the seat of the chair, quite near to the edge of the chair, and we're bringing our hands together with the fingers pointing up. So the hands in the namaskar prayer-like position, and then we'll walk our knees back. So we're keeping our hips over our knees. Just as a starting point, you can let your forehead come to rest down onto the seat of the chair. And just check the elbow position. The elbows need to be close to the edge, but not so close that they run the risk of slipping off the chair. But if your elbows are too far onto the chair, it won't be possible for you to let your head hang down into the space there between the upper arms. So long as your shoulders are okay to do so, You can then let the head hang down into that space between the upper arms. We've still got the palms together. We're not interlocking the fingers here. So hands in namaskar, fingers pointing directly up. And you've walked your knees back so that the knees are directly over the hips. Check the sensation of the elbows onto the seat of the chair. Now, first of all, just press the elbows down and feel what happens to the pose. As the elbows press down, the shoulders tend to resist the pose, resist the opening. They push up towards the floor. And then, in contrast to that, if you just lighten the pressure of the elbows to the seat of the chair, notice how the shoulders give, they release downwards, downwards and outwards. So we're just allowing the shoulders to be propped up by the chair. We're letting the elbows be propped up by the chair and allowing the shoulders to release in a downward direction, outward direction. Notice as the shoulders release, the front of the torso lengthens through the chest, through the abdomen, to the pubic bone. Just make sure though that you're not dipping and dropping the lower back. Just to rebalance there, the back of the pelvis needs to move away from the spine. It's just adjusting a little bit the angle of the pelvis as we do that. The back of the pelvis moves away from the spine. The sitting bones at the base of the pelvis, they move down a little towards the floor, and the pubic bone, it moves slightly closer to the navel. It just gives the lower back more support and gives more of an even, straight line from the elbows back to the hips. And then to come out of the pose, we'll bring the knees forwards towards the chair, and we can keep the chair where it is, as it is. We'll turn the other way, and from kneeling, we're reversing back so that the feet come underneath the seat of the chair. The buttocks will be quite close to the edge of the seat of the chair there. And then we're walking the hands up the side of the frame. Come towards the top, but don't go with the hands right up onto the top of the chair. Make sure that you're gripping the frame there with the thumbs pointing downwards towards the floor. Grip firmly with the hands so that you can straighten your elbows. Find the separation there. We're straightening, reinforcing the elbows. We're not locking the elbows. So the supportive muscles there around the elbow joint, engage them. And then keeping the elbows straight with the hands, it's as if we're pulling the frame of the chair outwards, trying to widen the frame of the chair. The right hand pulls the frame away from the left hand with equal force pulls the frame away from the right hand. Whilst doing that, move your shoulder blades in. Whilst doing that, roll your shoulders back, and then press your shins down, keep your hips forwards so that the chest lifts up, the sides of the chest and the center of the chest, but also the entire length of the spine. Keep your tailbone moving in and down, and lift your spine upwards. Let the spine lift, not the shoulders. Keep the shoulders releasing down and away from your ears. All right, and then release. Let's come up to standing. We'll work with a variation of the standing pose, Trikonasana. Let's turn the chair the other way so that the back of the chair is facing us. And this one will have all of the feet of the chair just off the yoga mat. And we're doing that intentionally so that we can just push the chair out incrementally into just the right position. So we've got all of the feet just off the yoga mat. We'll have our right foot near the end of the yoga mat. Make sure that the toes are facing directly out into the center of the room. We'll bring then the right hand down to the top of the chair. So we've got the palm flat and these knuckles where the fingers join into the palm, just a little bit overlapping the top of the chair. Left hand can come onto the hip, and we'll just step the left foot back. We may need 2 or 3 goes at doing it to get a leg's length distance between the feet. So a version of the pose Trikonasana. Our right foot's the front foot, the left foot's the back foot, the left foot is slightly turned in. Now without letting your chest slant towards the floor, we're going to slowly, carefully work to push the chair out and away from the body. Focus on the line from the right wrist back to the right hip. And as we've been doing, we want to both lengthen that line but also straighten that line. The left side ribs need to move down into the body for that line to straighten. And the chair needs to push out and away from you for that line to straighten. And then once we've established that basic shape, press the right foot to the floor so that you can lift the right thigh bone up and into the pelvis. So that right leg is supporting you rather than the weight of the torso sinking down onto that right leg. With the right hand, press into the top of the chair and deepen the right thigh crease back into the body. With the left heel, press down into the floor so that left hip is contained. It shouldn't feel pushed upwards. We're squeezing that left hip socket back and into the body. So there's 3 action points there. The right hand pressing, the right foot pressing, the left heel pressing, and we can use that as leverage to turn, first of all the pelvis, so that the back of the pelvis moves down, and then the chest. The chest turns upwards towards the ceiling, look up towards the ceiling, and roll the left shoulder back. As the chest turns, make sure that the right elbow remains straight. And then to come out of the pose, first of all look down at the floor, partially bend the right knee, and then step the left foot in towards the chair, and we'll change legs. Bring the chair back in closer, left hand onto the top of the chair, right foot step back, legs length distance between the feet, and then under control, slowly start to push the chair out. Make sure that the chest stays turning upwards towards the ceiling as the chair pushes away from you. So we want to avoid the chest tilting towards the floor and that right shoulder dropping towards the floor. Straighten and lengthen the line from the left wrist back to the hip. We can emphasize that line by pressing the left foot down, the left big toe base down into the floor, and pulling the thigh bone back up and into the pelvis. Building on that, the left hand presses down and we cut that left thigh crease, the natural crease where the leg joins into the torso, cut it back into the body. Right heel press down, and then pressing the left hand, pressing the left foot, pressing the right heel, turn the body so that the back of the pelvis turns down, so that the chest turns up. The left chest turn up towards the ceiling, right shoulder back, but keeping the left elbow straight. Just before we release out of the pose, if you can just that little bit further, push the chair out and away from the body to lengthen that line from the left wrist back to the left hip. And then to come out of the pose, look at the floor, partially bend the left knee and step forwards. Let's then turn the chair the opposite way and we'll bring the chair in closer so that the feet of the chair are just off the yoga mat. Again, the right foot will be near the end of the yoga mat. To bring both of the hands now onto the top of the chair. Same position for the hands, the palms are flat, the fingers are straight, so not gripping the top of the chair, keep the palms as flat as possible, and then we'll step the left foot back, and we're working here to have a leg's length distance between the feet. I'll give you a moment just to find that distance. So for me, I'm needing to bring my right foot in more or less level with the feet of the chair. As I look down there, I can see that my right toes are pretty much level with the feet of the chair. Now that will vary a bit from person to person, but don't have the right foot too far away from the chair. Eventually we'll look to lengthen the spine and get the chest to move forwards, but initially let's work to stabilize the pelvis. Make sure that it's balanced first of all. The right outer hip needs to lift up, the left outer hip forwards and down until the hips are level. And then we want to keep the hips level. So right foot pressed to the floor, right thigh crease cut back into the body, left inner groin turned back, the left shin pressed back, that combination of movements helping to keep the pelvis level. Now pressing the hands down, we can turn the pubic bone across to the right, the navel across to the right. Notice how the hands pressing down, it can do some of the work that ideally the legs would be doing. Just to show that up, we can just lighten the contact of the hands, make the hands hover, and see what comes to life in the legs. And whatever activity has come to life, woken up in the legs, keep it, as you then repress the hands back into the seat of the chair, but as a means of opening the chest further. Center of the chest move forwards, sides of the chest move forwards, as if we're just a little bit pushing the chair out and into the center of the room. Again, as we've been doing in a number of the poses, lengthening and straightening the lines from the wrists back to the hips. Compare the one from the right wrist to the right hip and the left wrist to the left hip. To come out of the pose, bend the knee, step forwards, and we'll change sides. Step the right foot back, legs length distance between the feet. A moment just to check that you've got the right positioning there of the chair. And then those actions that stabilize the pelvis. The left thigh crease back, the right inner thigh turn back, the right shin press back, pressing the hands down, turn the pubic bone to the left so that it comes into the center of the pose, turn the navel to the left so that the chest faces directly down towards the floor. And then just momentarily we'll just lighten the contact of the hands and see what shows up in the legs. And then keeping that work in the legs, return the hands to press firmly onto the chair, and as if just pushing the chair that little bit further out towards the center of the room so that the chest opens. Center of the chest moving out, both sides of the chest moving out. And then partially bend the left knee and step forwards. And we're going to work to, as we did earlier, hold more firmly now the side frame of the chair. Now we can do that at any height. We can work with the hands above the seat of the chair, probably optimal for people with less flexibility. Equally, we can eventually come down lower. We can bring the hands under the seat of the chair. So a moment just to find the ideal position for you. Make sure that you're keeping the spine as straight as possible here. So you'll know that you've come too low with the hands if your back ribs are starting to round and your chest collapse. And then we'll push the chair out again so that we're making as straight and as long a lines as possible between the wrists back to the hips. Press with the right hand into the chair, draw the right thigh crease back. Press with the left hand into the chair, left inner groin turn back, left shin press back. And then we'll turn the pubic bone to the right, navel to the right, and then stabilizing the pelvis, keeping it fixed. We'll just push the chair that little bit further out towards the center of the room. Sides of the chest moving out towards the chair, center of the chest moving out towards the chair. The upper back as straight as possible, the front of the spine as long as possible. And then partially bend the left knee and we'll change sides. Left foot is the front foot. So you've got that full scope of working in terms of height there. You can be below the seat. I'm working there. You may need to be higher than the seat and working your way up towards the top of the chair so as to avoid rounding in the upper back. Push the chair out. Deepen the left thigh crease back into the body.
right inner groin, turn back, right shin, press back. And then again, see if the chair can just push that little bit further out towards the center of the room, lengthening the spine as you press into the chair. And then partially bend the left knee and we'll step forwards. Let's then bring the chair onto the mat. Left heel back to the wall now. We've got the back foot deeply turned in. We step the right foot out, legs length distance between the feet, and we bring the chair in closer. Now we've brought the chair over the top of the right foot, so the right foot's disappeared out of sight. There's a slight gap there between the side of the chair and the shin. Just make sure that you've got the chair on the correct configuration. The back of the chair aligns with the right side of the mat. The right side of your mat, your right, when you're facing out towards the center of the room. We'll then be bringing the left forearm down onto the seat of the chair. Have your forearm coming across the mat. Your right hand comes up onto the top of the chair, firmly pressing down with the elbow lifting. If you're unable to keep your right knee straight, when you bring the left elbow to the seat of the chair, you can always put some height under the left elbow. So yoga block, make sure that the right knee can be straight. And then, as we did in the previous pose, right thigh crease move back, left inner groin turn back towards the wall behind, left shin press back, and pressing with the hands, the left forearm and the right hand onto the chair. First of all, just move the sternum bone out towards the center of the room. So at this stage, we're more or less Parsvottanasana, the pose that we've just been in, but now we develop it towards Parivrita Trikonasana by adding a twisting action. Press with the left forearm and the right hand and turn the left back ribs down and away from the spine. Check again the sternum bone, move it out, away from the pelvis towards the center of the room. And then again, that turning action, left forearm press, right hand press as we turn the shoulders and look up towards the ceiling. And then we'll release and we'll change the feet over and we'll turn the chair around so that the back of the chair is aligned with the left side of the mat. Bring your right heel back to the wall. Leave enough of a gap between the chair and your shin so that you can then bring your right forearm down onto the seat of the chair whilst having your right elbow directly underneath the shoulder. The left hand then press firmly onto the top of the chair. First of all, left thigh crease draw back, right inner groin turn back, right shin press back, and then turning the shoulders. Right back ribs turn down, left shoulder lift up, and we're turning the head to look up towards the ceiling above. Keep the sternum bone moving out towards the center of the room, but the left hip tucked back towards the wall behind. And then release, and we'll stay with the chair. Let's then turn the chair so that the back of the chair is facing towards the center of the room, front of the chair towards the wall, and we'll sit sideways on the chair. Sideways on the chair with the right leg against the back of the chair first. It will allow us to twist towards the right side. So just check that, the right leg touching the back of the chair. And then bring your hands to the frame of the chair, holding with either hand. Look down at your feet, make sure that the feet are hip width, make sure that the feet are level as we then start to turn the chest, the shoulders, and look over the right shoulder. In doing that, notice how the left knee tends to push forwards. Press the left heel down and draw the left thigh bone back into the body. And just to double check that the hips and the knees are staying level, move the back of the left hip towards the thigh bone. You can press the left heel down and move the back of the left hip towards the thigh bone so that you can glance at it and check the knees are level, the back of the pelvis facing directly back as we then start to turn. And the initial turning action comes more from the left hand. The left hand is pulling the frame of the chair away from the right hand. And we can feel that turning action just underneath the left shoulder blade. The back ribs there spread away from the spine. And then the right hand as if compressing the chair back towards the left hand. And feel how that helps that right shoulder to roll back and turn. From there we can look over the right shoulder. The turning of the chest, the shoulders, the spine, not distorting the pelvis. Keep the knees level, hips level. And then release. And we'll leave the chair as it is, but turn ourselves so that the left leg is against the backrest of the chair, feet hip width, feet level. Turn to the left, press the right heel down and draw the right thigh bone back into the body. Press the left heel down and move the back of the hip towards the knee. Just glance at the knees, make sure that the knees are level and stable as we then turn towards the left side. The right hand as if pulling the frame of the chair away from the left hand. The left hand as if compressing the frame of the chair back towards the right hand. We get that turning action from underneath the right shoulder blade. The left shoulder rolls back. Important also that we're lifting the spine and the chest with both hands. We grip the chair. Someone from the outside won't actually see that the hands slide down, but the action from within the pose, as if we're stretching the frame of the chair back down towards the floor, gripping it, pressing down, using that as leverage to lift up. The right waist lifts up, the right chest lifts up as we turn and look over the left shoulder. And then release. Let's keep the chair more or less where it is. We'll take some support to sit on. We'll have a 3-fold blanket to sit on. And then we're going to bring our legs through the frame of the chair. You're sitting on the 3-fold blanket with your sitting bones close to the edge. And then we'll, as we did earlier in our sequence, we'll walk the hands all the way up onto the top of the chair. And as we've been doing, we're aiming to make as straight a line and as long a line as possible between the hands back to the hips. Now, bring the ankles together. Inner heels extend forwards, big toe bases extend forwards. Press the backs of the knees down. Building on that, work your way up the thigh bone, pressing down as you go. That section of the thigh bone just before the pelvis, press down, it moves the back waist in, lifts the lower back up. Make use of the hands as well, as if pulling down onto the chair, as if you're trying to press the feet of the chair more firmly down into the yoga mat, and use that as leverage to move your back ribs in and lift your chest up. So we're coming forwards but keeping the spine as straight as possible, the chest as open as possible. And then we'll walk the left hand across towards the right side so that it's in the center of the chair, and then we'll bring the right hand down to the floor beside the right hip. Press the left thigh bone down, that section of the thigh bone just before the pelvis. Press down. Feel how it helps to keep the ankles level, the knees level, It will avoid that tendency for the left foot to push past the right foot as we now add a turning action where we turn the chest towards the right, but lifting the left waist up as the chest turns. Press with the right hand, pull with the left hand, left waist lift up, left chest lift up, left back ribs spread away from the spine. And then release, and we'll go to the left side. The left hand comes down to the floor beside the right hip. Both thigh bones press down. The root of each thigh bone press down where the thigh bone joins the pelvis. And then right waist lift up. Right back ribs spread away from the spine. And the right chest lifting upwards. Okay, and then release. And we'll lie out now for Shavasana. So we'll put the chair off to the side. We've got a three-fold blanket. We'll just reduce the height of that slightly. So a half-fold blanket. And then we'll be lying back, head onto the blanket, neck onto the blanket, but the blanket coming level to the tops of the shoulders, not underneath the shoulders. Arms out to the side, you've got your palms facing up. And then straighten your legs. Make sure that the backs of the legs retain their length. As the legs relax, the feet will turn out. But just check that the heels are not shrinking back towards the calves. The calves need to keep their distance away from the backs of the knees. The heels away from the calves. Let the body weight rest, settle down into the floor. As you breathe in, check for the presence of the side ribs spreading, the eventual lift in the chest. So the abdomen will lift as well. And just search out at what point in the inhalation the chest starts to inflate and lift up. Notice there's a really clear sequence there, the side ribs spread and then the chest lifts up. Don't try to deepen the breath. The breath will naturally in Shavasana gravitate towards stillness. Side ribs spreading, eventually the chest lifts and there's a very clear quality of lightness in the front ribs. So an almost air-like quality that where the front ribs are effortlessly lifted out of the way by the breath. But in contrast to that, the more stable earth-like quality of the pelvis, the thigh bones, some of those larger bones in the body, the upper arm bones, and that clear sense of them gravitating down towards the floor. Feel it as you breathe in. Thigh bones, pelvis, shoulders releasing down, gravitating down as the chest lifts up. A few more moments there, quiet in Shavasana. Okay, and then we'll take a couple of slightly deeper in-breaths. And then bend your knees, bring your hands across your chest or abdomen, eyes open, and
roll to the side and come up. Thank you for practicing with yoga selection.